Hey, everybody, welcome to yet another great interview in our business summit. Today, we are going to be talking to Jeff Perkins from Park Mobile, and we're going to be talking all about branding our companies and PR, so press releases, and how to get ourselves out there. So, without further ado, Jeff, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and a little bit about branding and PR, just to kind of give us an intro.
Thanks, Bill. Well, it's great to be with you and with all the audience here. Like Bill said, my name is Jeff Perkins. I'm the CEO of Park Mobile. Park Mobile is the number one parking app in the United States. So many of you listening have probably used the app. You use it to pay for parking instead of having to go to the meter and put coins in. So it's a pretty useful app to have. So if you don't have it, definitely check it out. Before Park Mobile, I've had a kind of a long career working in advertising and marketing. And I started my career in ad agencies in New York City. So I worked on some big brands like Tide laundry detergent and Cascade dishwashing detergent. Later shifted in-house to work at autotrader.com, the number one classified site for automobiles. I worked at several tech companies in Atlanta before Park Mobile. So really long career in marketing and advertising before I stepped into the CEO role at Park Mobile.
Cool. Awesome. So obviously a long list of qualifications here with what we're talking about today. So first thing I kind of want to get into is what is branding when it comes to a company and how, well, let's just start with that. So what is branding when it comes to companies?
Yeah, if you think about what a brand is, there's kind of two components to it. It's the very rational components of the features and benefits of whatever the product or service is, right? And then there's the other component, which is more emotional, the emotional piece of it. So a brand really comprises the rational benefits along with a bit of emotion. And so a great brand will generally elicit some kind of reaction from the user or from the customer. And so that's important to think about for businesses. A brand just can't be features and benefits. It also has to have a little bit of an emotional component to it.
Okay. So can you take us through one or two examples of like a company that's branding well, or just basically like how they applied their rational and then brought in the emotional to create their brand?
Yeah, a lot of the emotion in a brand oftentimes is tied up in the colors and the logo that are really designed to elicit a response. And so brands that I've worked on, like Tide laundry detergent, Tide's really got that bright orange box or carton with that really kind of bullseye logo in the middle. And whenever people see that, it's immediately recognizable and elicits kind of a response that goes beyond what it is. It's just soap. That's all it is in that canister or in that jug is soap. But when people actually see it, depending on who they are and what their life is like, some people think about their kids because doing laundry for their kids is a bit of a ritual. Some people think of the smell of clean clothes and kind of the emotions that come along with that. So a brand really takes just the functional benefits and then really ladders it up into something that elicits more emotion for people. You think about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is just carbonated sugar water, but you see that red can and it really elicits a lot of emotion and brings memories of, oh, I remember hanging out with my friend and drinking a Coke. And so that's what great brands really do. They really encapsulate rational and emotional benefits in the consumer's mind. You think about things like Nike. Nike just makes rubber shoes that you wear, but it's become a much bigger brand and really embodies athletic performance and achievement in a really big way. So those are some of the things that go into building a brand. It's much more than just what the product does. It goes into kind of the higher level benefits to the end user.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So then I think what I want to break down now that we kind of have a few examples and really like the feelings and the emotions and what we're trying to build around the idea of a brand. Let's start breaking down some of the I guess steps, for lack of a better word, of like putting this together. So let's say, someone has a product. What should be the first thing they do to try to start figuring out what their brand should even be?
Yeah. Well, before you really figure out what the brand can or should be, there you have to kind of take a step back and figure out, all right, who is the target audience for this brand? Who is the consumer that's going to buy this brand? And then you have to really understand who that consumer or customer or client is and kind of get in their head a bit. Why do they buy the brand? How does the brand make them feel? And you start to kind of paint a picture of, okay, our brand needs to deliver this for the consumer. And once you understand that, then you can start to build the brand. And the essentials of building a brand are really around probably first and foremost, what is your logo? And for people that are maybe starting a business, you may say, well, I designed the logo myself and on the computer, and or my child developed the logo, or my neighbor. It's always good to get a professional designer to design your logo for you. Now, fortunately, today there are services out there that make this really cheap and easy. So I would never recommend that someone just designs the logo themselves, because you really want professional help on this, and people that are very good at designing logos can help you. There's a company I've used in the past called 99 Designs, and you can go to their website. You put in a description of what you're looking for in the logo, and they have designers all over the world who will come back with ideas for you. And generally, it's very inexpensive to get what I think is a very high quality logo designed for your brand. So you really start with the logo. And then some brands also have a tagline. And the tagline is a very brief encapsulation of what your brand is all about, or what you want the consumer to remember about your brand. Famous taglines are like Nike, just do it, right? That's probably one of the most famous taglines ever. The Apple tagline is think different. And what you notice about great taglines is that they're not really about what the product does. Because a Nike tagline, if it was just about what the product does, would be like, rubber shoes for your feet, or Apple's would be computers and iPods. You're right. That's not a tagline. A tagline is really designed to elicit really an emotional response. My current company, Park Mobile, our tagline is a smarter way to park. Because we really want to own this idea of smart parking and giving people smarter options when they're thinking about finding and paying for parking. And so great taglines really kind of level up what are the features and benefits of the product into something a bit more emotional for people. So now you have the logo and you have the tagline. And then you really need to create some broad brand guidelines for what your product is. So if you think about it, the logo should have maybe the name of the company and some colors, and those colors become sort of your brand palette, right? So everything you do as a brand should be consistent, because if your logo looks different than everything else you're doing, people are gonna get confused, and you're gonna have what we call brand fragmentation. So you want everything to be very consistent. So every time someone sees your logo, a sign on a building, a brochure, it should all have a very similar look and feel. And you get that through developing brand guidelines, which really define your colors, your fonts, your imagery, and all of those different aspects that go into making up a brand. So when you have all of those things set up, now your brand is starting to kind of come together, right? And so if you have, say, a store, like a retail store, your brand should be very consistent within the retail store. So your logo should be around the store. The colors of your brand should be around the store. If you have a digital business, your website kind of becomes your virtual store, and it should be very consistent and really look like your brand and have a very distinct look and feel. And so you start to realize that your brand needs to really infuse itself through every possible touch point with a client or a customer.
Awesome. Now, that was a lot to unpack there, and really kind of put it in perspective of the importance of consistency and is obviously being the same across it. And I think that's where a lot of small companies have a problem, because they're either super excited about getting out there, so they start doing absolutely everything, or they will focus on one thing but not necessarily think about integrating some of this bigger picture stuff that starts to really take it from individual reach out to now we're getting customers that are checking out our website or coming back and had nothing to do with us originally reaching out to them. And I think that's the power of branding itself, where you're now taking it to another level where now you're no longer reliant upon just trying to get like those sales through cold calling and direct stuff. And now you're starting to get that secondary kind of generating and stuff, and generating and leads, sorry, not stuff. Um, and I think that kind of leads nicely into the next thing that we wanted to kind of touch on was now that we've got our brand, it's consistent, we're starting to put it around where we need to get ourselves out of there. And one of the main ways that companies can do this for cheap or relatively no money at all is through PR and press releases and things like that. So what I wanted to kind of start with was what is PR? I know press releases is one part of it, but what is a good definition so people can really understand? Because everyone says PR, but I don't think many people really understand what it is and what it can do.
Yeah. So, public relations is really the activity of getting your brand placed in the media. So, placed in local television, national television, newspapers, magazines. And so, in the PR world, there's a term called earned media, and that means you've created some news that is so relevant to a certain base of users that a newspaper or magazine or television show will talk about it, write about it, do a segment about it, and that that is great when you can get it. So when, for example, when Park Mobile launches in a new city, that's a public relations event for us. So we want the local media to know about it, and we want them to write about it in the newspaper and on the websites, and we want to do we want them to go out on the street on the local news channel and interview people about it. So there's a lot of things that we want to do to get the local media to cover a Park Mobile launch in a city, and so because it works very hard, and it's people generally trust local media or reading newspapers than they do just seeing an ad, and they're more engaged with the content in a local media than they are with a paid advertisement. So it's really an effective way for businesses to get the word out without having to pay for the advertising that could be very expensive.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. So now what I want to kind of get into is, now that we know that it's promoting event or something specific, I think one of my side questions before we kind of get into the next piece is, so you obviously can promote different events or different pieces. Um, is it possible to promote, like it has to have some sort of story, correct?
Yeah, I mean, media is not going to write about you or do a segment about you unless there is something that's relevant to the people that are watching or reading. So,
Yeah.
like I talked about in the case of Park Mobile, it's parking in a local city is very relevant for so media wants to cover that. Media wants to let people know, hey, there's a new parking app that you can use around the city, and so there's relevance there. But if I just wanted to do a news story about how great Park Mobile is, nobody's going to cover that because it's not relevant to the readers or the viewers of the media.
Yeah, and I think that ties nicely into the next question, which is, okay, now that we understand what the power of this can be, how do we start engaging it? One, how, what kind of stories would news be interested in, so that we can kind of figure out like, okay, this isn't going to work that way, or this is going to work that way. And then two, now that we kind of have a story that we think might be useful, how do we go about trying to reach out to these people to get it?
Yeah, it really is going to depend a lot on the business, right? So if you have let's say a local hair salon, maybe you do a deal where if you can't afford to get your hair done, we're going to give away free wash and style and cuts for people that just can't afford to get their hair done. And that would be a really great story. And then you can engage local media on that story and they could come in and cover it. And that's a great way to get local PR for your business. Things that are related to charity, things that are related to good causes. Oftentimes you could do that. And that's a great way to get local media coverage for things. The other thing that some businesses can do is if you have interesting information that is relevant. So an example that we do at Park Mobile, we have a lot of data on where people park, when people park, times of day, day of week. Is parking up or down this year during COVID? We had a lot of really interesting data on parking trends related to COVID. And that became great from a PR perspective because we can go to the media and show them this data. And they would do a story not about Park Mobile, but they would do a story about parking trends using our data. And then they would mention us. And again, really, really smart way to get some free local coverage or national coverage in this case, without having to do paid advertising. And it's content that actually adds value to the reader or the viewer because now they're understanding what's going on with kind of national parking trends or local parking trends in their market. So that kind of thing, using your research and data to get news coverage is another way that you can really get some the word out through public relations.
Absolutely. So it's all about creating the story or the way that that content can be interpreted, that it gives that information or value or, what the audience of the news place will be needing.
Exactly.
Cool. So now that we have an idea of what it is and we have an idea of what to create, how do we get it out to those news people?
Yeah. So the most common way to do it is to write a press release. And there are plenty of press release templates online that you can go and find. Just Google press release template. They're pretty simple to write. Press releases have to be pretty short. And a lot of times you put it out and local news will pick it up. There are also services that it's called putting it on the wire. And so there's a service called Cision. There's a service, I believe it's called PR Web. There's a service called Business Line. And those are all services that put out your press release on a wire so reporters can consume it. So it's something that reporters are tracking press releases all the time. And so those are useful tools. Sometimes they cost a little money. So but you can be very targeted with your press release. So if you are in a specific state and you only want your press release to go out to media in that state, you can set it up that way. If you're in a specific industry, you can target that specific industry. So the wire services are pretty useful, but the thing that's even more useful is building relationships with key reporters that are kind of covering either the city you're in or the industry you're in. That I believe is really important. So a thing that I've always tried to do is have relationships with local reporters, national reporters, people that are editors, people who are covering what we're doing. So as we have news, I don't always have to do a press release, but I could call them or text them or email them and say, hey, we have this story coming out. Do you want an exclusive? You can interview us? Reporters always like that. Generally with media, if you can give media an exclusive on some kind of story, they really like that. So that's a strategy a lot of PR firms will implement, where they'll go to a couple media outlets and they'll offer them the exclusive story, and maybe one of the media outlets will bite and do an exclusive on it, and then you do get the exclusive story, and then you put the press release out to the rest of the general population. But these are all really useful tactics, and if you're really trying to dig in on PR and trying to figure it out, there are plenty of resources online that give you kind of very general guides on how to do PR. So you can just go and kind of look at some of them. They'll have PR template, press release templates, advice on how to reach out to media. And those are really, really useful tools. But I really think, back to what I was saying, having relationships with a local reporter that covers your kind of business, or a reporter in the industry, is just critical. So like, here's another example. I'm in Atlanta. That's the city where I live and where Park Mobile's headquarters is I have really good relationships with the publisher of the Atlanta Business Chronicle and several reporters from the Atlanta Business Chronicle. So whenever there's a local story that I want to present, I don't have to just do the press release. I actually call the reporters directly or email them directly. And oftentimes they will do a story because I have that relationship with them. And they know that when I come to them, I'm going to have something that is relevant and that's something that their readers will want to check out.
Absolutely. And those are some really great tips on yeah, how to build this and how to put it together. I think that the next question would be, do you have just a few like some best practices for your press release as far as I like the writing of the press release, but also like how to format it when you send it to someone. Just a couple tips on that. Nothing long, because like you said, you can find a lot of that online. But from your experience, if you had some specific ones that stood out to you.
Yeah. So with a press release, oftentimes less is more. For most press releases, you want to have a really good headline. So, a lot of the press releases that you see about Park Mobile, if you can go to the Park Mobile website and look at our newsroom to see all of our press releases. We always start with Park Mobile, the number one parking app in the United States, announces today that it is launched in the city of X, right? That's usually how most press releases start. And then you start to give some detail about Park Mobile will be available in 3,000 parking spots around the city to be used to pay for parking easily. So that's usually your first paragraph, just kind of what happened and why it happened. Then you get into a little bit more detail. To use the Park Mobile app, you download it for the Android or iOS store. You set it up. To start a session, you do this and that. So you give some direction on how you use the app, right? Then the third paragraph is usually a little bit more on the value story of why it's good that the app is available in the city. The app is, this is a good thing because there are already 10,000 users of the app in the city, and now they'll be able to use that app as they park. And in the state, there are 500,000 users of the Park Mobile app, and as they visit the city, they'll be able to use the app. And then usually you finish with a couple quotes. And so one might be a quote from in the case of the Park Mobile example, a representative from the city, and then you finish usually with a representative from the company saying how excited we are to launch in the city. And that's kind of a very general way you can write a press release. So whatever business, you start with a good headline on what you're doing. You start with a high level paragraph on announcing what the news is. You give a little more detail. You explain why it's good, and then you have a couple quotes, from key leaders that explain kind of how exciting this is. And that's really it. And that's really all a reporter would need to put together a quick story. Now, there's other things you can do within a press release as well. A lot of times you can attach like a product shot or imagery or even a video demo of the product. And reporters really like this because then if it's, for example, if it's a newspaper, but they also have a website, they could take the video and they could put the video on the website. And that makes the content more interactive. And so that's something that I think a lot of media outlets really like when you provide the logo, you provide maybe a product shot, and you provide a video demo, and then they can use that in their content.
Awesome. That's a really good breakdown of the press releases and what needs to get together. And I think that it's good for business owners to do press releases for multiple reasons, but another good one that I can see is that it really helps you understand your product and what you have and what you're trying to do. And if you're doing press releases, you can also kind of see where that interest is. If you get anything from it and you get feedback, that data can be collected to start figuring out exactly who's responding the most to your information. Awesome.
And another important thing, once the press release is out and published, you can put it on the wire, right? You can send it directly to the reporters you want it to go to. But then you should always put it on your website, right? That's really important. So your website becomes kind of a repository for all of your press releases. Mm-hmm. And you then use the link for the story, and then you get your employees to post that on their social media, on their LinkedIn pages or on their Twitter feeds or on their Facebook feeds. So it really amplifies the news. And so that's another real strategy with PR. It's not just about, writing a press release, but then it's about getting it out into as many channels as possible using your website and using social media channels.
Absolutely. And getting the word out. All right, cool. So to recap, we went through branding. What is it? How does it work? We also went through how do we apply it and how do we create that brand. Then we stepped into the PR side of things, public relations, and starting to realize how we can get it out there. How can we create that news story? How can we get it in front of the right people? And then how should we distribute it? So that's a lot. Is there anything else that you think that before we get into some actionable steps, is there anything else that you think we should mention before we kind of get into that?
Well, beyond the brand, public relations are really important. But the other foundational piece that we haven't touched on yet
Mhm.
is the website for the business.
Okay.
The website for the business is critical, and it's really an extension of the brand, right? But having a really good website that explains who you are, what you do, what your value is just critical. And it's critical for two reasons. One, as people come to your website to learn about you, it's an important resource for those people that might be customers. But two, the way people learn about products and services today is generally through Googling, right? So the first thing they do is they Google what they're looking for. And if you're not coming up in the search because your website isn't great or you don't have a website, that's a real problem. And you're probably missing out on a lot of potential customers. And so just as important as just having a good looking website that has good content, the website has to be built in a way that the search engines will tag it as relevant for certain key searches for the industry that you're in or the, whatever you're trying to compete for. So that's absolutely critical. Probably one of the most important things especially for a small business, is having a really good website that is going to come up in the search results for those relevant key terms.
Absolutely. And I feel like with the availability of easier ways to create websites, a lot of people will create one and then be like, oh, it's done, and kind of go on to the next thing. And then they wonder why nothing's coming back for it because they have that website. So again, kind of touching on something that you mentioned earlier, it's one of the areas that you would definitely want to have a professional who has experience with all this kind of stuff help you with to make sure that you're getting the most out of it and that you are owning that page one, if you will, of Google when people look up certain things. So, tying that all together, tying it into the social media and all the content you put out, and, really trying to get as many different search links to be you, and the website is definitely the number one of all of it. It's kind of like the bottom of the funnel, if you will, and all of that. Um, Sweet. Anything else that you wanted to mention before we kind of get into actionable steps?
Well, I think what you said there, you don't always have to engage a professional on the
Okay.
website. There are a lot of very easy to use tools out there that will help you build a very professional, polished looking website.
Hmm.
And actually, I wrote a book last year that's called "How Not to Suck at Marketing." You can kind of see it behind me there. And one of the chapters in the book really takes you through how to build and structure your own website. What kind of content do you need and how do you do it? So you look at tools like Squarespace, for example. Squarespace gives you really, really nice website templates out of the box. So someone who's really not technical could pretty quickly build their own website, get it up and running. And then they have more advanced features around search engine optimization. And search engine optimization is really what makes your website rank for the key terms in your category. So a small business owner who maybe doesn't have the money to go pay a web design firm and a search engine optimization firm can actually right there in Squarespace build a really nice looking website. And Squarespace has website optimization tools and search optimization tools that'll really help that person build a site that will rank in the search engine. So I think there's a lot of things people can actually do themselves if they don't have the budgets to go hire a firm because there's a proliferation of tools out there. Another tool that is, I think, a fantastic tool is called Canva.
Hmm.
Canva is kind of a do-it-yourself design tool, and just makes it really easy. So you can design really attractive graphics without having to pay a designer. And they have tons of templates, and it's a really, really useful tool for people who just want to do it themselves and don't, and it saves them money on paying other vendors. So that's another tool that I highly recommend checking out is Canva.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Great resources there. And, following through those, it's good to know from a marketing professional that a lot of those, things that they offer are working as well, because, I know that there are some out there that don't work as well. So, um, definitely good. So that was Canva, and I think you said Squarespace, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
Squarespace. There's a tool called Wix, is another website building tool.
okay.
There's lots of good websites. I have used Squarespace several times in the past. You go to WordPress. WordPress has lots of templates,
Mhm.
and so you just have to find one that, and you can play around with it. The nice thing with a lot of these tools is you don't have to just throw down your credit card and then you get something you can't use. You can go into a free trial, play around with these tools, see if it's going to work for you, and maybe it won't, and maybe you realize, hey, I'm not technical enough. I really need to go bring in a professional to help me, and that's okay too.
Yeah,
Or in some cases, I really want to focus on running my business. I don't want to have to do all this stuff, so it's worth it. It's worth the money to pay someone to go do it for me. But a lot of people ask, like, where do I find people that could do my logo? Where do I find people that can build my website? And that's where I think, for businesses, a good strategy is to find other websites you like, or find other brands and logos that you like, especially for businesses that are in your local area, and just reach out to the people. Reach out to the local businesses in your area and just say, hey, I really liked your logo. Can you tell me who designed it? Or I really like your website. Did you use an external firm to design it? And see if you can get some good referrals in from people that are in the area where you already like what they're doing and you want to do something similar for your business.
absolutely. And that's always good advice for any kind of connections that you're making as well, because it helps you learn your local area. Who are the other businesses that are operating there, and what have been their experiences. So always good to build your network in that fashion to begin with. Awesome. Anything else before we get into the actionable stuff?
No, I think that covers it.
Cool. All right. So what are some, let's say like two actionable steps that they can take when they're looking to get into to start putting their brand together, and when it comes to PR and their website even.
Yeah, so I think if you have just, let's assume you have a clean slate, or maybe you already have kind of a brand or you have some things, but you want to kind of start over and reboot. The first things to really focus on, as a business. Okay, I like to go through this exercise. Maybe if I'm joining a new company and in marketing, but do kind of an inventory of everything you have. Like, how are we doing on these? So, like, how is our brand? Like, do we like our brand? Does it look good? Does it need to be updated? How is our website? How is our press outreach? And I like to do kind of a report card and say, all right, well, our brand maybe is a C, our website is an F, our media outreach is an A, and then that helps you kind of identify areas to focus on, and that's important because the one thing every business owner knows is that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And you really have to focus on the things that are going to make the biggest impact to your business. So after you do kind of the inventory of things you need, then you start chipping away at it. Okay, our brand got a C, so I want to update the logo. We need a new logo. So again, you go to that 99 Designs or other online logo designs. You get some designs and you see if you like them. Right. And maybe you hire a local designer to help with your brand guidelines, your colors, your fonts, all that stuff, package it all together. A very, very easy process. Shouldn't take too long, shouldn't cost too much money. Right. And then with the website, like we were talking about before, try to do it yourself. If you can't do it yourself, there's plenty of people who will build a website for you. Even when you go to some of these website builders like Squarespace, I think they have a marketplace of agencies that can help you build it if you don't have the capabilities, right? And then on the PR side, maybe try to do it yourself. If you can't do it yourself, there's plenty of local PR firms that I'm sure would help, do press releases for you, write articles, and help you connect with media. So a lot of the decisions you're going to want to make as a business is, what do I want to do myself, or what do I have time to do myself? Or what should I kind of farm out to different vendors in the area? And so that's a really important decision, and something that you're going to have to really kind of think about with your business. Do you want to spend the money to outsource it, or would you rather do it in-house? It's some businesses, they have their own in-house design team, right? Other businesses, they just have a local contractor, and other businesses, they go to there's a tool called Upwork, which is a really useful tool. So Upwork is a marketplace of freelancers. And on Upwork, you could find people that'll build your website, design your logo, write your press releases. There's really anything you need from a marketing perspective from your business. You could find Upwork vendors that can help you. And sometimes the vendors are in the US and they charge $75 an hour. Sometimes they're overseas and they charge $10 an hour. There's a whole range of people that you could contract with on a tool like Upwork. So that's another really useful tool for people as they're thinking about how do I get some expertise to help me with some of these things. And like using a tool like Upwork really is a cost-effective way to get some, skilled professionals to help your business.
Absolutely. And those are some great steps for people to take in those three different areas that we talked about. So awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, you taking the time to talk to us today. And I'm sure we all do. And I think we really went through a lot of stuff. So thanks again for coming, and I will see everybody in the networking event tonight.